Hi, this is Alex from PHP Academy and welcome to this CSS tutorial on lists. Now we're going to take a look first of all at why we use lists in HTML, and then we're going to look at the important stuff, which is actually styling them up, making them look nice, and how we can work with unordered lists to style them how we want. Now we can use unordered list in terms of an actual list of data, for example a list of things we might offer on a site, just lists of any information, but we might also style them to look like menus. Now since we've already covered unordered lists for menus in this tutorial series, I'm not going to be looking at in terms of menus, I'm going to be looking at them in terms of actual lists and how we can style like the bullet points and change them, things like that. And then we'll look at some custom images and how we can use a custom tick image for our unordered list as well. So the first thing is the markup itself, which you may be familiar with. We need to use UL tags, which sort of signify our unordered list block, and then we have our list items within, so li is list item. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some, just some bits of data inside of here, and then we'll go ahead and preview them in the browser and we'll start to style them up. So I'll say, I'm just listing some benefits that you might have on a site. There we go. Okay, so 3 things in a list. When I refresh, they just come up as you would normally expect them to in a browser with the default styling. They pretty much look the same on all browsers, so you don't really need to worry about how they look different across browsers. We've essentially got a list here. Now let's take a look at what we've got. Well, we've got some padding here. Let's just inspect this. Okay, so we've got a margin at the top, which is the orange area. We've got a margin at the bottom, and we've got some padding on the left-hand side. Now we're going to keep an eye on the padding because we've got one list property or CSS property we can apply to this to change the bullet point position. So you can see the bullet point position at the moment is on the outside of the actual list. Bear in mind the blue area you can see is the actual list, and the green area is actually outside of the list, so the bullet points are displaying outside. So we'll take a look at that in just a moment. But the first thing I want to take a look at is the list style type. So the properties for this are pretty straightforward and obvious. Over to my primary.css file, let's go ahead and start to style this up. Now we can either add a class to this, an ID to this if it's unique to a page, or we can target ULs altogether. So I'm going to go ahead and just target ULs altogether, but obviously you can use a class, in which case you would use, I don't know, say .a-list. If you were to go and give this a class, so for example a-list. But again, like I said, I'm just going to target ULs altogether. UL. Okay, so what do we want to do? Well, we want to go ahead and change the list style type. Now we can change the list style type to none, in which case the bullet point will just vanish. If that's what you want, just a list of data, maybe an indented list of data, then you could choose list style type none. So by doing that, you'll see that the bullet points vanish. We can also use the shorthand property, which is list style none, but list style is a shorthand property and it tends to not expect other values, but by all means use this or list style type, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so we've set the list style type to none, but how about if we want to change it? So we might, for example, want lower Roman numerals. Lower Roman numerals will just apply a 1, 2, 3, and so on down the list. So, for example, if we went ahead and duplicated these items here, we would get 3 more numbers. So it will just increment in numbers. So it's quite good in that way if you need to list, something in with numbers against them. There's also a few other options. So for example, you can change this to square, and what that will do is it will produce a square instead of the default circle. There's many others. I'm not going to go through them now. It'll be a waste of time, but you can go ahead and look them up and choose something that's relevant to you. However, later on in the tutorial, we are going to look at putting images in place of these, and that's extremely useful because it means you can load in a custom image, to your desire, and it will look, exactly how you want it. Okay, so a second property we're going to look at is list style position. Now remember before, when we inspected this, you can see that the blue area is the list itself and the green is the padding on the left. Now what happens if I want these bullet points, or squares as they now are, to be inside of that list? I don't want them to float on the outside. For example, if I was to set the padding to 0 and the margin to 0, and I refresh, now what's happened? Well, the list, the bullet points, I guess, if you like, have disappeared. Well, they actually haven't disappeared. They've actually sort of come off of the page, if you like, which is a problem. So, for example, if I go ahead and say body margin left 50 pixels, you can see that we've got them back now. So really, this is a bit of a problem. We might want the list bullet point lists to be, the bullet points themselves to be inside the list. So all we need to do is pass it this property, which is list style position. Okay, so by default it's outside, as we've already determined, but we can change this to inside, which will mean that the points are now inside of the list and therefore visible if they are going to overlap the container that they're within. And in this case it's a shame because they're overlapping the body container, which is not visible in the browser. So you might have seen that problem before. If not, that's an explanation of it. If you have, then that's how to solve it. Okay, so now we've done this, let's go ahead and look at the third and final property I'm going to cover, and that is the list style image. Now this is great because we can use URL to load in a custom image for our points. So the first thing I'm going to do is set the list style type to none. That's important. Let's go ahead and refresh. You see that the list style point goes. Now I'll just show you what I've got inside of my directory. So we're working in index.php, index.html. We've got our CSS folder with the primary style sheet we're working with, and inside images we've got an image from the last tutorial, and we've got a tick icon here. So that's a GIF image, or a GIF image, however you pronounce that. So what do we want to do? Well, we want to go ahead and we want to load this tick for a bullet point. So inside here we can use the list style image property, and we can go ahead and load a URL in. Okay, so I'm going to say URL, and I don't need single quotation marks, however it's your choice if you want to put them in. I'm going to traverse back a directory, so I'm using ... to go back, because remember we're inside the CSS folder, and then I'm going to go into images, and then I'm going to go into this tick and select tick.gif. Now what that's going to do is that's just automatically going to override this, even though we've got a list style type of none, and it's going to place that tick as our bullet points. So when I refresh, you can see that them ticks have been placed in the place of where the bullet point would usually reside. So we've now created an unordered list with a few of the different style types that you can have. Like I said, go ahead and look them up if you want to find any more that are more suitable for you. We've looked at list style position, which is extremely useful when you're creating lists inside containers and you don't want that extra padding to ruin it. I forgot to inspect the element afterwards, but you can now see that the entire blue area has the tick inside. And we've looked at list style image, and we've incorporated these image files, these ticks, into our list. So that's styling unordered lists in CSS.